Today we're on Psalm 46, which is really the outflow and result of Psalm 45, where we saw Messiah coming, his first coming, and leading on to his second coming, his kingdom, the earthly Jerusalem. Both of these psalms are written by the sons of Korah, which is an interesting thought in itself. Now, Psalm 46 is a well-known psalm for basically two verses that people take from it. That's verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. And verse 10, be still and know that I am God. Now, verse 1, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble, is often used by people in connection with difficulties and troubles in the world, when there's a catastrophe or an earthquake, or I remember September 11th happened, 2001 in New York. This verse was read in a lot of churches and a lot of prayer meetings. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. It's also the verse that Luther's hymn, A Mighty Fortress is Our God, is based upon. And then be still and know that I am God, verse 10. We used to have a Bible store, and it was one of the most popular plaques for verses. People, or on cards, people were always looking for the verse. The only thing is, I found that people didn't really use it properly, and sometimes New Agey type of people into mysticism or meditation, that type of thing, would use this verse, be still, in the sense of blanking their mind out, and connecting with the spirit world. Of course, this is a misuse of the verse altogether. In fact, it has nothing to do with meditation or clearing your mind or blanking your mind out. It has nothing to do with that at all. In fact, the psalm as a whole is prophetic. Now, we can make applications. We, as I've already said, verse 1, we've looked at the application of that that's generally used, or even verse 10, a proper application can be made, not the mystical or New Agey one, but simply to be quiet and know that God is God, He's in control. These are our proper applications of these verses. But the interpretation of the psalm looks forward to the millennial times, when the Lord begins to establish His kingdom on the earth, and it can be divided in three parts. Verse 1 to 3 is the refuge. Verse 4 to 7, we get the river, that is the river of God in the earth, in the millennial earth. This comes out in Ezekiel chapter 47, where we get the river flowing from under the throne and going throughout the whole world, bringing life back after the Great Tribulation. And then verse 8 to 11, we get the ruler, the one who will be here ruling over the world. That is the Lord of hosts, the God of Jacob. So God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. And then we get the little word Selah, which is or Selah, which is the natural ending of that section, that division of the psalm. A time to take a pause and think about it. Though the waters thereof roar and be troubled. The Lord Jesus spoke of that in Luke's Gospel, chapter 21, where he speaks of a time that will come in which the waves and the waters will roar. And we think of the book of Revelation, chapter 13, we see the beast that rises up out of the sea, the turbulent masses of the nations, of the peoples, in disorder, chaos, or tumult. That's the idea here. Though the waters roar, the nations roar, and they bring their armies against Jerusalem during the Great Tribulation, against the remnant, the godly remnant. And even though that happens, though the mountains shake, the great kingdoms are about to fall, yet the believer at that day will not fear, because God will be their refuge. And then we get the establishment of the kingdom. Verse 4, as I already mentioned, there is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. So we get, as I have already mentioned, the river flowing through the city of Jerusalem, divided in two directions and going through all the earth. You might want to turn to Ezekiel. It's also mentioned, I believe, in one of the other prophets, in Joel. And we get intimations of it in Zechariah chapter 14, where there's a great earthquake and the city of Jerusalem is divided. And from there the river will flow out to all the world. And although in verse 6 we get that the heathen or the nations raged and the kingdoms were moved, he uttered his voice, that is God, that is the Lord Jesus at his coming, and the earth melted. And then verse 7, the Lord of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob is our refuge. Now this title of God, we get here this two-pronged title, or two terms used, the Lord of hosts and also the God of Jacob. And this happens twice in the psalm, in verse 7 and then in verse 11. The Lord of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob. The Lord of hosts, that is Yahweh, Jehovah, who is over all the starry hosts of heaven, but also over all the angelic powers. He's the God of gods. He's over all, whatever name is named, he is above all. But at the same time, he's the God of Jacob, you know, the worm Jacob. Jacob in all his difficulties and all his struggles and all his failures, yet he's the God of Jacob. It's a lovely connection. The Lord of hosts, the God of Jacob. He's high and over the angelic powers, but he stoops to the very low one, that is Jacob, in his difficulties. In fact, the Jewish people will pass through what's called the time of Jacob's trouble. That's the Great Tribulation. You can read about it in Jeremiah chapter 30. And so in verse 8, come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he makes in the earth, or he has made in the earth. You know, the desolator will come as a judgment. It's the abomination of desolation. Because of the abomination, because of the beast, the Antichrist, the desolator will come, and God will make desolations in the earth during the Great Tribulation, during Armageddon. And then verse 9, he makes wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear asunder. He burns the chariot in the fire. You see, all the weapons of warfare will be burned in fire, will be put aside. And Isaiah speaks about that in Isaiah chapter 2. That, you know, they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and they shall learn war no more. The Lord Jesus will dismantle the military-industrial complex, and peace will ensue. Peace will fill the earth. But I like what F.W. Grant says. He will make war against war. You know, there will be desolations in the earth. He's the God of war. He will come, but he will put down all the nations, and he will establish his kingdom. Therefore, verse 10, be still and know that I am God. That's the proper interpretation of the verse, because the people can now be still. All the tumult, all the warfare, all the suffering that we see in the world today, and that will increase, will be finished, and people can be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted amongst the nations, verse 10. I will be exalted in the earth. That's not now. That's coming. That's future. You see, these Psalms are highly prophetic, brothers and sisters, and we ought to interpret them the way they were meant to be interpreted. And we can apply it. I can take verse 10 and apply it. Be still and know that I am God, or God is our refuge and strength in trouble. We can apply these things. We can take them by faith. But the fulfillment prophetically is yet future. And then verse 11, we get that name again. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Can you say that today? Can you say that God is your refuge? God is your strength in trouble? It's a matter of faith. It's stepping out on his word, believing what he has said, resting upon that. That's what faith is resting on what God has said, even despite all evidences. Resting on what he has said, taking a stand on his word. And doing so, you will know God's peace. You will know his presence with you. May it be so for you today.